Hello and welcome to Lucas Group's Recruiter Intel Spotlight. I'm Mandy Witchin, and today I'm joined by Jim Lose, Managing Partner with Lucas Group. Hello, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Mandy. Thank you very much for having me.
Today, Jim's going to be sharing a few real-time stories of veteran placements during the pandemic, and I'm really excited to hear some of these stories. But before we get into that, Jim, if you would just please take a moment and tell us a little bit about your recruiting background, your area of specialization, and your current role with Lucas Group.
Sure. I work in Lucas Group's military hiring solutions team in their Washington, D.C. office. We have kind of a player coach model, so I help manage the team, but continue to find jobs for the men and women who I represent. For the last 20 years, I've worked with people who are transitioning from their military careers and help place them into careers in business. And I've been really fortunate in the sense I've been able to successfully assist over 2,000 veterans during my time at Lucas Group. I initially came to the company as a candidate. I was a Marine intelligence officer. Wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do after leaving the Marines. Heard about Lucas Group, got in contact with the company, learned more about recruiting, and I thought this might be a career that I could sink my teeth into. Like a lot of people who join the military, I wanted to serve and give back, and I felt like this could be a career where I could continue to give back, and turns out I was right.
Thank you for that introduction. Now, as everyone knows, unemployment rates have skyrocketed during the pandemic, but that hasn't necessarily made it easier to find qualified candidates right now. In your
Right.
experience, what's the talent market like right now in your recruiting niche?
I mean, my heart goes out to the people who have lost jobs, tens of millions of Americans, and there certainly are a lot more job seekers now than there were, at the beginning of the year. But in the pool of talent that I represent, we are mainly focused on kind of junior to the mid-level executive roles in business. And I'm working with some very, very talented folks, who are out of engineering or, and construction or math backgrounds. And so multiple offer situations are still very common for the people who I work with. Yeah. So all in all, I mean, I'd say all things considered, in the last 6 months, I've been a lot busier than I ever expected to be. So, the job market for the military transition market is doing pretty good.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you have been pretty busy these past 2 quarters. Tell me about a recent placement that stands out in your mind.
Well, I mean, as far as the last 2 quarters, yeah, I've been shocked at how busy we've been. This is my third recession at Lucas Group in recruiting
Wow.
through it. And so in the two previous ones, they were nothing like what we've seen as far as even the numbers of unemployed, but also as far as companies that are still hiring. And so it's kind of been a bit of a head scratcher as to why, but I'm very happy. And I think, again, it's the kind of roles that we're working on. But as far as, and I think it's also goes to early on when we saw the pandemic coming,
Mhm.
our team, especially the DC team, started focusing on essential industries, food manufacturers, companies that, no joke, make toilet paper and paper products.
Hey, we all need those.
Yeah, and also companies that are going to be in the fight, healthcare companies,
Mhm.
companies that weren't impacted enough. I mean, finance, the markets are doing well, and so the financial companies are hiring, tech firms are hiring. So we started being more strategic about our calls. And along those lines, as far as, possibly the most relevant placement I can think of as far as how it relates to today's situation is, I was working with a Marine Corps communications officer, undergrad in biomedical sciences out of Vanderbilt. And guess where he wound up? He's a biotech firm in California on the front lines as a program manager working to develop rapid testing for COVID-19.
Wow.
So really important work that he's doing, as well as some of the other folks that I'm dealing with. And also I'm working with people who have found themselves in the unemployment lines. One Army officer, a West Point grad who I worked with about 4 or 5 years ago, made a significant impression on me just because of the kind of person he is,
Mhm.
and how capable he is. He was working in the Permian Basin. Oil prices, as we know, in the spring plummeted into negative territory.
Right.
He was running a camp and a big team, and all of a sudden found himself without a job. He reached out, And as luck would have it, that day we had a job, had an opportunity that was perfect for him. And 2 weeks later, we were able to place him into kind of the same level of role of he's running as the VP of operations for their Texas ops for a commercial logistics firm. So, we're still able to help people who are in the unemployment lines, help people who are transitioning out of the military and into their first corporate careers. And so, again, I feel very blessed to be kind of in this position and be doing so well where a lot of folks in America aren't.
And you're doing a lot of good. The employers benefit, the professionals benefit, and we all benefit from that too, seeing those good people finding good jobs in a tough economy. Now,
Truly our industries, it feels like a win-win for everyone.
It really does.
For the candidate also, it feels good to be able to, represent people who serve their country and find them their next employment.
Absolutely. In your experience, what makes military veterans such great hires?
As far as like your soft skills and intangibles,
sure.
First and foremost in the Marines, I learned how to lead. I learned how to have kind of a mission-focused, get it done attitude. And the men and women I represent, have both those same leadership skills and that mission-focused, kind of way of approaching not only things in the military, but also business. So, those are some of the soft skills that we sell as recruiters as we tell their stories. But as far as hard skills that they bring out, they bring a ton of hard skills. Engineering. And I work with, young officers who, at the age of 25, 26, they're tasked with driving a nuclear-powered submarine or aircraft carrier.
Right.
Construction, Army Corps of Engineering officers. They're building roads, building airfields, logistics. Marine Corps officers who are moving on a regular basis every 6 months, thousands of people, all their gear, all over the world. Supply chain, people who understand how to run warehouses. Relevant to today, we're hearing about it in the news all the time, the cyber attacks. Military is a phenomenal talent pool, out of the Air Force, out of the Navy, of people who are trained to prevent cyber attacks against our defense infrastructure in the country. So a lot of hard skills coming out of the military too. And there are some areas too that we place into that you would not think are as obvious, like corporate sales, business to business sales. Mm-hmm. The people I represent operate well independently. They're competitive. They have good client-facing skills. They brief all the time. As an intel officer, I was briefing, frequently. And so they'll do great in sales. In finance, we work with some people with some pretty wickedly smart math aptitudes. And they can go in and, do trading at hedge funds. I placed in the last 6 months a young Army officer as an analyst for a venture cap firm here in the DC area. So, it's not just as obvious as what's on the resume. There's a lot of areas that military talent can go into and kick butt in business.
It makes sense. And definitely you've taken my blinders off and certainly brought up some very good points that I didn't think of. And probably people who are watching this video are going to think the same thing, that there are so many different areas in which these individuals can excel, just given the opportunity. And that's sort of the matchmaker role that you play, is having that background in the military yourself. You can kind of help the individuals who you represent and the employers who you represent and make that great alignment and that great connection based on more than what a resume could show.
For sure. In my industry, being a storyteller is critical. Where you have to be able to tell the candidate's story to the client company who's hiring. If they haven't hired military before, certainly that's a critical role in kind of opening their eyes to what they can do.
Mm-hmm. And just thinking more holistically, because obviously if an employer has an open role, that's, one of the benefits of hiring somebody is you have that position filled. But just the larger perspective, what are some of the less obvious benefits that come along with hiring a military veteran, transitioning from that military environment to private sector jobs? How can they, for example, impact company culture?
Veterans work really well in teams, whether they're leading or whether they're following. They want to build a cohesive unit. They share ideas, they collaborate, they innovate, they come up with solutions. So as far as impacting corporate culture, they can have a great impact. Everyone in the military knows what a good leader can do for a unit, and it's no different in business. Probably one of the best examples of truly being able to impact a company's corporate culture. It goes back to my first quarter in the business 20 years ago, where I worked with a Marine officer who then, 15 years afterwards, called up. He's VP of a software company and running all their sales, and was kind of tasked with building out a sales force, recreating it on a shoestring budget. So he called up and we worked together, and ultimately, we're able to place over 20 engineers who also had client-facing skills. So not the easiest search, but over 20 people in the firm. And these officers, from all different parts of the military, Navy, Marines, Army, but they quickly started collaborating, sharing information, talking about what they were doing, what worked. None of them had any sales experience. Most of them were coming fresh out of the military. So they would set up kind of meetings to talk and organize, and it wound up, we placed 75% of their sales force, and a lot of those reps now are leaders in that company. Military folks know how to lead, as I mentioned, and so they can be a great sales rep, but also they're somebody who's promotable and can lead other sales reps sometimes. And a lot of those placements are now leaders not only in that organization, but throughout the software industry. So certainly can have a dramatic impact on a corporate culture.
Thank you for joining me today, Jim, and thank you for sharing these stories and your insights. And if you'd like to learn more about Lucas Group or get in touch with Jim, you'll find information at the end of this video. And on behalf of Lucas Group, thank you for watching, and thank you for joining me, Jim.
Thank you very much, Mandy. My pleasure.